I'm going to call to order the Transportation, Infrastructure, and Innovation Subcommittee. Do we have any cards from the public? We do not. We have minutes of the meeting next for the meeting on September 4th. Any corrections or motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Takes us to items 2 through 6, which are consent items. Does anyone have any questions, want discussion, or more information? Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the consent.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I believe item 7 is for information only. Any questions? Hearing none. We have the minutes or memo from last night's Citizen Transportation Committee. I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at that, but that's for information only. The freeway program, do you want any presentation? Hearing none, we'll go to item 10. Item 10 is the South Central Extension Downtown Hub Project Funding Agreement Amendment.
Madam Chair, Marcus Coleman, Light Rail Administrator, is here to present on items 10 and 11.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. As Mario stated and as the agenda shows, we're here to talk about the funding agreement for the Northwest Extension Phase 2 and also the South Central Downtown Hub project. The purpose of this amendment is to allow for us to amend the existing funding contract that we have with Valley Metro to proceed with the progress of both of these projects, the Northwest Extension Phase 2 and South Central. Valley Metro is responsible for managing the construction of these projects on behalf of the City of Phoenix, also operation and maintenance of these projects. And so the funding agreement will allow them to continue to proceed in these projects and move forward. As the projects reach milestones and the agreements, additional amendments will be required for the project so that we can make sure that we continue the process all the way through to completion. So you will see additional funding agreements come back to the CTC as well as the subcommittee and formal council. So start with the South Central Downtown project. The South Central project is a 5.5-mile project that starts approximately Jefferson and runs along the alignment all the way south to its terminus at Baseline Road. This is a 5.5-mile project, which has 2 parking rides. One parking ride is at our existing Ed Pastor station. The other parking ride is a new location that we were able to work out with Valley Metro, which I'll highlight in the next slide. This parking ride is located at the northwest corner of Central and Baseline. This parking ride location allows for us to have easy access to the end-of-line station, which is located in the center of Central Avenue. And it also provides access along Baseline Road. So travelers running east and west along Baseline Road, north to south along Central, have easy access to ingress and egress from that parking ride. As well as, if you see on the graphic ahead, there's a future expansion area. So as we look at other modes of transportation along our Baseline corridor, we have the opportunity to either expand parking if needed or to incorporate other types of high capacity transit into this development without disturbing any of the properties there. That's one of the key things that guided the design of this parking ride, is that during the parking ride with the design that you currently see before you, it allows us not to disturb any of the existing businesses within the corridor. So no business is required to be relocated or impacted from an access standpoint. So we will be working with AutoZone and O'Reilly's, which are the 2 properties to the west of the property, to get access for the road. Access is Baseline, but besides that, there will be no impact to any existing business that is in that general area.
I have a question.
Okay.
This future expansion, is this the moving the transit center?
So
There's discussions, well, I haven't been on this committee for over a year, so there was some discussions of moving the transit center or where it's currently at to here.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, this future expansion would be for additional parking spaces. The transit center would remain where it is. There had previously been some discussions about potentially moving the transit center.
All of it, right?
Everything.
Yeah.
But at this point, that's no longer
Okay.
in the plans.
Okay, I was just curious, only because I didn't see all the way to Bayside.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the unique features of the South Central Downtown Hub project is the downtown hub itself. Creating this downtown hub allows us to go from a one-line system that you see today to an actual two-line system, which makes for easy transfer from east-west to north-south traveling individuals, and it creates kind of a natural hub around our Washington to Jefferson, Central to First Avenue area. Also, as you can see by the graphic ahead of you, it has a loop over to Third Avenue. This loop will allow us to do the work in the downtown hub one time, and as future projects such as Capital I-10 comes aboard, we will not have to disturb that downtown hub during that construction. And so now we are going from design into the construction period. As early as October 14th of this month, we will start to see some construction in the downtown hub area, as well as underground exploratory work from Rozier to Southern. Roll into our Northwest Extension Phase 2. Northwest Extension Phase 2 is a 1.5 mile project that starts at approximately 19th Avenue and Dunlap, heads west on Dunlap Avenue to 25th Avenue, north to Mountain View, and then directly west over the I-17 into Metro Center Mall. One of the key things that we've been able to do with working with our design professionals and our teams at Valley Metro is some valued engineering. And so last time this project was shown to the subcommittee and to council, the end-of-line station was running parallel to the I-17. Well, through some value engineering and trying to maximize the benefit of the property that we have to impact, there's been a redesign that actually makes the project faster to construct and also more affordable. And so one of the key elements is that the tracks will no longer turn and run parallel with the I-17. They will run directly into the mall. And as you can see here, the tracks are able to be two bridges that actually span the I-17. Previously, this was one bridge, one solid bridge that expanded the I-17 and curved. Because of that one solid bridge, it was quite a bit of engineering and work that needed to go into that, as well as material costs. Being able to have a minimalist bridge that will allow for two tracks to go across is actually easier to construct and a lot less material costs to this.
Artwork on those bridges?
There will be artwork incorporated into the bridges, as well as there will be artwork incorporated into the station itself. The other piece of this work is to relocate the existing transit center that's on the west side of the Metro Center Mall and relocate that to the same location so that we have the transit hub here. This will act as a transit station for us and transit center for us that will allow for bus and rail so people can transfer between those two modes very easily. Also, due to the fact that we had very minimal impacts to changing the design, we wanted to maximize the property that we have to impact. And so instead of doing a surface parking lot, which was originally designed, with a very large surface parking lot to the north of where this design is, we're actually able to save money and build a parking structure that will kind of do two things. It will provide the parking that's needed. It will also provide a covered parking location for people who want to park there and take our transit system. And so we have,
Parking structure.
yes.
Currently, at the bus transit center, you don't pay to park, do you?
So if you are taking transit use, you do not pay to park.
Okay,
So
so
that
that
is-
garage, you won't pay to park?
You will not pay to park in that garage.
Okay.
You are right, Madam Chair. And so the other unique piece of this is the elevated platform. This is the first time that we've had an elevated station within our entire alignment. And so we have a lot of firsts. First time that we're doing an elevated bridge over I-17, first time we're doing an elevated station, but this is going to make this station function very well. The location of the station, as you can see, it's not at the end of the tail tracks, and the reason that it's in the location that it is because this will allow for future expansion. So if there is expansion to the north or to the south, the way that this is designed, it will allow for those tracks to be extended in either direction. And so to give you a visual of what that looks like, this is the transit center. This is a 3D rendering, which gives you a visual of what the transit center as well as that light rail station looks like. As you can see, it is definitely very impressive. We've actually pushed Valley Metro, and they've pushed their artists to be very creative with this design and the way that we incorporate art into the project. So I'm very pleased so far.
The other question I get asked is, can pedestrians use that bridge?
Currently, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, currently pedestrians cannot use the bridge over the I-17. That is one of the things that we have heard comment back, and we are working with Valley Metro to decide if that is something that can be incorporated into the design at this stage.
Okay, thank you.
And so with that, we're still in the design phase of that project. We're going from 60 to 90% design with hopes to start construction in 2020 with completion being in 2024. And so our recommendation, our request, is that the TI&I subcommittee recommend approval to the City Council an amendment to the current funding agreement with Valley Metro for an additional amount not to exceed $159 million for the South Central Downtown Hub project and $79.4 million for the Northwest Extension Phase 2 project, and continue progress on the final design and construction activities.
Anyone have any questions?
I do. On the design, we hear of our current light rail, how there are no, I don't even know how to explain it, that people are able to walk on the platform at any moment, and there are no barriers in the sense of if you have a paid ticket, then you can enter. We have, or Valley Metro has became creative by putting something on the ground saying if you're past this area and you haven't paid for your fare, you probably shouldn't be in this area. With our new expansions, I would like to look at or see if there's a possibility to add those dynamics and pieces as we move forward in expansion, because I feel in the future we're probably going to have to look at that and see how we would place those type of equipment or the type of fencing needed to manage that. I think it's also a safety issue. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to somehow, before I know we're probably in the Northwest, we're in final design, but
No, we're not fine.
okay, to look at, see how we can incorporate that on both extensions, on all extensions.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we will look into that.
Right. One of the things that people out in Royal Palms 19 North talked about was, and I talked to Metro as well about this. We talked about security, making sure that we had, now that we're going to have a bridge, it looks amazing, right? And I think the design looks really good, but I'm also a little concerned about safety and making sure that we're going to have enough security, that we're thinking about all of these like small details as we're moving forward, because we want to make sure as we hopefully continue to expand the light rail, right, we don't want people to have negative experiences with it, so that we can continue to have support around it.
So, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we have already started those conversations with Valley Metro, as well as our public transit department, knowing that for both extensions, we really need to focus on our end of line as well as our other platforms that we bring into the system. And so the Northwest Extension Phase 2 is a little unique because it's the first time that we actually have a parking structure right adjacent to our elevated platform. So we know that that's going to create some additional security needs, as well as we understand that with all of our systems, we need to look at not only the platform, but also our parking rides and making sure that individuals feel safe to park there, they feel safe to leave their vehicles there and return there.
I know I've been pretty adamant about that garage needs to be well lit.
Yes.
I don't want anybody sleeping in it at night or causing any problems, as well as not only the interior, but the perimeter needs to have lighting, so
So,
I'm sure you've heard me.
yes.
many times.
Yes, I have, Madam Chair.
Anyone else?
I am
Go
too. Speaking about the parking structure, because I'm thinking about it in a safety sense, is there a way with modern technology and the way we purchase fare tickets, is there a way, if I purchase a fare ticket, then that fare ticket will allow me, if there's arms to go in and out of a parking garage, my fare ticket will then allow me to go in and park? I'm sure there's, I don't know, I'm sure there's some software, or could you look at those innovative ways? I'm thinking of safety.
Yeah,
No.
so Madam
And-
Chair, members of the subcommittee, that is something that we can look at. One of the things that we have done with our partners at Valley Metro, well, I shouldn't say we, but Valley Metro has done, is they do have certain fare zones. And so what they try to do is make sure that people can access certain areas and then be able to purchase fare. So if you come to a park and ride location and you don't currently have fare, you want to be able to access the parking garage, park, purchase your fare, and then be able to ride on the light rail or bus or whatever mode of transportation that you want to take. But we can definitely look at that and see how do we place or make sure that we're placing ticket vending machines in areas that people can access that fare before accessing those.
That's not what
facilities.
what I am asking for, is I'm visualizing this parking area. And very similar to our parking garage. Is there a way that when a fare is purchased before you enter the garage, because there's arms or barriers, that in that ticket, there's some type of code so that if I stick the ticket into the machine, it will open up the arms so for me to go park. In order for me to park, I've had to pay a fare.
Madam Chair,
So that's where I'm thinking in the safety issue.
Councilwoman Pastor, yeah, we can definitely take a look at that. I think one of the things that Marcus was alluding to is if someone doesn't have fare purchased yet and they want to go ride the rail, but they need to
Right.
park, so maybe there's a way they can access their
Well-
fare ahead of parking.
Well, I'm thinking there's a machine.
Yes.
Right. As I'm entering the parking, so if think of the airport too, of the machine as it's right there, so if I'm going in, I don't have my fare, or I need to add to my fare, I can stick it in, add, it has that little code, then I just put my fob, or however it goes, put it right, it just came from DC, so they have a whole new system. You put it right there, and then it opened up the arms, and you can go in.
Okay, yeah, we
So
can take.
kind
yes.
of that technology. And that's what I'm looking at.
Aren't they going to put in all new machines, probably within that range of time? Vending machines for tickets?
So Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, yes, Public Transit is currently in the process of looking at a fare collection vending contractor to look at the regional fare collection system. So that is part of what we'll be looking at by the time we are completed with this project. But more than likely, we'll have that new capital, the new fare vending machines available for not only the South Central, but also the Northwest Extension Phase 2 project. And so looking at where those fare vending machines are placed will be part of that process.
And then my second question is about South Central. The second question is, I heard October 14th. I remember that date because that's my son's birthday. So I'm glad all these things coincide in my mind, personal events. Have you started communicating with the community in the sense of this is what's coming? I know it's a beginning, it's not construction, but with all the dynamics that happened with South Central, I think that we have to do extra efforts and be mindful of that community, of how we start noticing, so.
So, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, yes, we have started that communications. Recently, we've hosted 4 public meetings that we actually have pre-construction information at those meetings, as well as we've been distributing flyers throughout the corridor. These flyers that actually announced the public meetings also gave information on the pre-construction and early construction activities that will take place in the downtown hub, as well as the area approximately Rozier to Southern. And so we've canvassed that area that is from 7th Avenue to 7th Street, from Portland all the way to South Mountain Avenue.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your,
Oh, yes, and we also have signage as well, sorry.
appreciate your presentation.
Do we have a motion?
I move item 10,
Staff's recommendation?
test staff recommendation.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
We actually
You need
combined
two?
both 10 and 11 in this
Okay,
presentation.
I make a motion
I thought we
for
did both.
South Central Extension Downtown Hub project funding and the Northwest Extension Phase 2 funding, design and construction.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously again. Is it done yet? You got it built? All right, brings us to item 12. Staff, want to give a presentation, please?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Jim Bennett is here from the Aviation Department on this item.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, I'm joined this morning by Jordan Feld, our Deputy Aviation Director for Planning and Environmental, and also Jay DeWitt, our Deputy Aviation Director for Finance, to discuss this item. Today, what we are recommending to the subcommittee are 3 separate but related items related to the city code as it affects the landside operations at Sky Harbor International Airport. The first is we are proposing changes to the commercial ground transportation fee schedule that's currently in the city code. Second, we are recommending adjustments to the parking rate cap that is currently in the Phoenix City Code. And then thirdly, we are recommending increases to the unattended vehicle sanctions that are in place at Sky Harbor. Now, these changes that we're presenting to you today and recommending were thoroughly reviewed and are being recommended also by a unanimous vote of the Phoenix Aviation Advisory Board in their last meeting. And I just want to take a quick second to recognize the work that Lizzie Kim, the chair of our board, did on this item, as well as Andrew Cohen, our chair of our Business Development Subcommittee, and also board member Stephanie Cherney for their involvement in this item. So just a very brief reminder on my part. You remember that the airport operates as a self-sustaining business and requires commercial enterprises doing business at the airport to pay either cost recovery or fair market value for the use of airport facilities to access the commercial market that we have created. And of course, it is the revenue that is generated from those businesses that allow the airport to be self-sustaining, to meet its bondholder covenants, to invest in its facilities, and to grow and continue to support the Phoenix and the Arizona economy. So today we're recommending changes that we feel are reasonable and will mostly eliminate a subsidy that we currently provide to the commercial ground transportation industry at the airport. Now I would ask Jordan Feld, our Deputy Aviation Director, to review our recommendations today.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, appreciate this opportunity to give the update. So very quickly on ground transportation, there's a few background points we wanted to share. The first is today we collect about $9 million. Our GT costs are closer to $26 million. So that right there kind of defines the gap that Mr. Bennett just referred to. GT costs include curbs, roadways, SkyTrain, maintenance, and pretty much anything you would imagine with this very large operation at Sky Harbor is a major business line for the airport. As Mr. Bennett noted, we recently completed a very collaborative stakeholder process. We often talk about the collaboration we do with our community partners and business partners. This was really a truly collaborative process in the sense that stakeholders identified the scope of work we would take, the peer airports that we would look at, and we allowed the stakeholders to identify the consultants we would use. And we also hired an ombudsman consultant to help explain some of the wonkier or kind of nerdier aspects of this economic data collection that is a peer airport review. So an ombudsman consultant was also available to any of the stakeholders any time during the process to help synthesize information or give feedback to staff, and we think it worked really well. A key takeaway from the stakeholder-driven peer review, you can see the peer airports that we looked at on the right here, and they range in size from Austin Airport in Texas up to Dallas, Fort Worth, San Francisco, Midway, so you can see it's a pretty good range there. All of the airports we looked at had higher GT fees in every category, meaning taxi fees, limo fees, shuttle fees, TNC fees were all higher. The biggest gap, however, was in that TNC category. And you can see where Sky Harbor is today relative to our peers. We're in that Salt Lake City, Austin quintile. Obviously, as an airport, we act, feel, and our business processes are much more like Midway or San Francisco or some of the airports at the top end there. The other kind of takeaway here is to do an apples-to-apples comparison, we look at O&D, originating and destination traffic. And that becomes kind of a good way to compare different airports in terms of their revenue collection from GT. The airport has about $310 per 1,000 O&D passenger, compared to over $500 for the peer average, and closer to $900 and $1,000 for, again, those airports that you would more likely associate with Sky Harbor. One of the key, and please stop me if there's any questions. Again, I admit this is economic dork data here. But one of the key policy issues for the airport is strategies, capital improvements, things that minimize traffic on the terminal roadway system. So recently, the City Council looked at the comprehensive asset management plan, and we spent a lot of time talking about the security plaza need and the cut-through issues. The SkyTrain is obviously a very obvious improvement towards minimizing those congestion impacts. And it's not unrelated to this topic. GT, the way we operate and bring our passengers in and out, very much has an influence on that terminal roadway system, and so we need to think about incentives for GT to minimize that impact. The 24th Street station that we're building right now is another great example of that. So the stakeholder collaboration, again, started over a year ago in the scoping and consultant identification process, and as we worked our way through the process, these were kind of the key things that emerged that were really important to stakeholders. So the first was, as we make changes, make sure that we implement those changes with the stakeholders. So after we leave the code amendment process, make sure that we continue to partner with them. As it turns out, we're recommending a drop-off fee, which we don't have today, and a pickup fee. So that's a good example of how stakeholders will need to be involved in making that change happen. The remote pickup and drop-off incentive, as I just talked about, is important to the airport and also important to the stakeholders, meaning we would provide a reduction for pickup or drop-off activity outside the terminal core area. Fee predictability. Obviously, for these businesses, they want to be able to understand what will change over time in terms of their business model here. So we're recommending a very simplistic way of keeping up with CPI over time, so an annual adjustment of 3% or CPI. That gives the stakeholders the most predictability possible. Fair curb share, meaning the types of GT activity that are the most dominant should, economically speaking, probably have the most curb allocation. And so we need to be cognizant of that, but also try to find ways to ensure that amenities enjoyed by some of the lower magnitude providers, they get to keep their curb share as well. So there's a bit of a trick we need to now pull off, which is fairly allocate more curb to the activity that's growing, where the trend is going, but also make sure we're maintaining the amenities for the other GT providers. And then some specific items that were very important to the TNCs, the transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, increasing the technology. Their model very much runs on seamless technology. So the airport would make investments in those areas, provide better branding and identification in the terminal system for the TNCs. And because the TNC fees that we looked at other airports were so different from Sky Harbor, it is fair to phase in towards those higher fees, give the TNCs a bit of time to react to those higher fees. Some of the things we're showing on this slide are very much part of the code, the ordinance that we're recommending and can be codified. But things like the partnership, the technology investment, those are obviously not really code items. So we've agreed to those through the discussions with, as Jim mentioned, the Phoenix Aviation Advisory Board and emails and discussion. We understand that those non-code agreement items that are important would also benefit from a letter from the Aviation Services Director. And we're certainly happy to do that to help codify those issues in any way we can, show that we do totally agree and plan to implement that modernization and the implementation partnership. Yeah.
Jordan, when you say the non-code agreements, could you please elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Thank you. So some of these items easily translate into legislative text that we can put in code. So phasing in the fees, the curb share allocation, and how the different fees work. But the implementation partnership in doing that, it's hard to design a regulation that gives those stakeholders what they need. So it's more of a narrative letter that would agree to those things.
So basically what you're saying, it's not part of the code, it's an agreement that has been discussed, I would say, in the PAB committee, and then that will now be formally placed in a letter.
Madam Chair, to Councilwoman Pastor, that is correct. We've agreed to, one of the requests was enhanced signage so that the customers could more easily identify and find the pickup and the drop-off locations for the transportation network companies. We've agreed to that. Enhanced Wi-Fi coverage on the curbs, as Jordan mentioned, for their technology. We've agreed to those items, but they're really day-to-day operational things that I will commit to those in a letter to those companies for us moving forward.
And it's an agreement that I would value in the sense of it's in the best interest also for the customer, but in the best interest of the airport and the whole system in general, for everybody to working in a collective.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the question. So let's get into the actual code nuts and bolts here that's being recommended. So let's start with the transportation network companies. They're probably the harder of the fee schedules that are being proposed here. And you can see the phase-in that we're proposing for code, taking them from $4 on January 1st of 2020 up to $5 by the year 2024. And you can see after that point, just like the non-TNCs that I'm about to talk about, they would then have that 3% CPI predictable increase from 2025 forward. And one thing that we could codify that was important to the TNCs was, again, that curb share. So today, the TNCs represent about 70% of our GT activity. We can't simply change the curbs from 30%, 35%, which they have today, to 70% in 1 year. But very easy to do is to do that over 3 years, is what you're seeing here. And by year 2023, we would set that curb directly to whatever their percentage share was for that preceding year. And that's, we understand, acceptable to the TNCs. The other thing I would note here, the 30% reduction in fees for remote pickup and drop-off, either at the 44th Street station or the 24th Street station, so that would be codified. And the enhanced branding and technology that Mr. Bennett just talked about, and Councilwoman Pastor, yeah.
So going back to the 30% remote, what would that look like if I was paying it? So 30% of $4 in 2020, and then 30% so it just keeps going.
Right.
Up. Okay. So it's an incentive for people using Uber and Lyft to go to the remote and then connect on Skytron.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one. Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah. I got it. It's an nice incentive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got it, got it, got it, got it.
Yeah, so the best way to get the cars off the terminal roadway is to give them some reason to not use the terminal roadways is a less wonky way to say that.
Jason, how soon will the 24th station be available?
Madam Chair, the 24th Street Station will become operational towards the end of the second quarter of 2022.
Okay.
But the 44th Street Station is available today.
And can it accommodate that many cars?
Yes, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Jordan, so yesterday when I was in a meeting, I kept hearing $10, $10. So what I'm seeing on this chart right now, it's really $4 for drop-off, $4 for pickup, the 30%, which is $8. And what is happening is within 5 years, I think that's what they were speaking of, in 5 years, then it will have gotten to the $10 for drop-off and pickup, and that would be the total.
Right.
Okay. And then my understanding, let me go back to the slide real fast, where the collaborative peer airport fee review, and you talked about OMD. My understanding that these fares are 2 years behind. So when this was done and taken, so these fares currently, where it says $266 for Phoenix, they're not up to date in the sense we don't have the current fee.
So, yes, and that's
Okay.
true of both the peer airports, in any kind of study, right? You're typically going to be a little bit behind on the data you're
Right,
collecting.
it's just
Yeah.
data that it usually takes 2 years. So Chicago Midway could be higher than 1120
Correct.
as of today, because it's 2 years, and I'm assuming there was a percentage every year or something.
Not only is that the case, Councilwoman, but these other airports also have different ways of collecting GT revenue. So in some cases, there's profit sharing or other types of models. So yeah, it is very tough to provide on-the-minute accurate data for all these peer airports.
right.
They each do it a little differently.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So I had a question. So can you just elaborate just a little bit on how we got to those rates, right? Because from what I understand, at some point it was a flat fee, just $5, and then that's changed over time a little bit. So can you just elaborate a little bit how we got there?
So, thank you, Councilwoman, and I'll let our finance director give you a very technical answer as well, but before I unleash him. So I guess, it's important to note, almost every airport we looked at had drop-off and pickup fees. So that's the first thing. We're moving from just pickup to drop-off. So that explains the split you're seeing in these numbers. But if you're a business, obviously you look at the bottom line. So what's that total number, the 10 that you mentioned? So that ties into every airport we looked at, not some, every, cost recovers or attempts to cost recover for this activity. So in some ways, these numbers reflect a little bit of reverse engineering in the sense that we look at our costs and then try to fairly allocate that cost to the activity that surrounds it. And with that planner view of it, I'll let the finance director give you a more technical answer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. J.D. went over the finance group, and we allocate costs for airlines and for everybody else, and so we're pretty good at this. So to start, we have a $26 million nut. That is the total cost of all the ground transportation at the airport, landside. Similar to $150 million for airside and the terminals. We allocate those to the airlines. We allocate those to concessionaires. Landside, we attempt to allocate to the ground transportation providers. And so $26 million, we have come up with some qualitative and quantitative measures to allocate those. And they go by the volume, the amount of curb space that they need, the amount of resources they need, and the amount of staff time, public safety resources, and technology resources. And so we put all those together and added them up to come up with the numbers that you see here. And I can get into a whole lot more detail, but I don't want to get too far ahead if you like. Is that enough? That's more than most people like.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate the questions again. So I'll quickly move here. We certainly can come back to any of these slides. So similar to the TNC, so the non-TNCs, these are taxis, limos, shuttles, intercity buses, and everything in between. A much more simplistic schedule. This reflects minor increases in every category. Again, consistent with all the peer airports, the average, every single type was a bit higher than Sky Harbor's. So we're adjusting to that. And similar to the TNCs, very focused on predictable increases over time so that they're able to manage their businesses effectively, sustainably over time.
Jason, do you base that on the increase of passengers that go through the airport?
It does, Madam Chair, thank you for that. The financial modeling that Jay does around this absolutely reflects change over time in passenger demand, O&D, traffic, roadway conditions, even capital improvements that will come out of camp that would affect this issue, like the security plaza.
So going back to that last slide, when you go to like 2024, you're talking 60 million people go through Sky Harbor? I mean, what are we today, 48, 45?
Yeah, Madam Chair, we will be at about 46 million this year. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And just like the TNCs, thank you again, the remote activity incentive is important to the shuttles and everyone else as well, so they would be able to get that incentive. And then while the TNCs defining that curb share was important to them, on the other side of that coin, important to the limos, taxis, and everyone else is trying to maintain that curb that they have. So that's why you're seeing this phase-in of the curb allocation so that we can find additional curb for TNCs without necessarily taking away from these other providers and the amenities they have. So that's it for the GT fees part of the code amendment. As Mr. Bennett mentioned, there's three parts of this, and again, we certainly come back to this. I promise these parts will move a bit quicker.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. So parking rate caps. Today in city code, we have parking rate caps. They have not been adjusted since 2008. The economy has obviously grown since then. The CPI has increased since then. So we're proposing a cap on the rates, meaning the most we could charge for parking, to be set at a level commensurate with the CPI growth since 2008. Additionally, there's no structure today for how these would keep up with CPI. So related to the last point is we would put in code that annually there would be a 3% or CPI adjustment going forward. And finally, we have a bit of a difficult to implement hourly code treatment for hourly parking. So we're suggesting we just provide a simple flat rate for hourly parking. And then finally, unattended vehicles. You'll recall about a year ago we had a bit of an issue with this. It shut down a good portion of the airport for several hours. You can just imagine the economic impact hit that takes when the airport shuts down for that amount of time. So we are proposing the maximum sanctions and fines allowable under state law for unattended vehicles in the terminal curb area. So this restates the staff recommendation, which, as Mr. Bennett pointed out, very much dependent on the hard work of our Phoenix Aviation Advisory Board members, two of which I believe are here today, for helping us get to this point. Thank you again for your consideration and your great questions. We're happy to address any additional concerns.
I have one more question. Is that the maximum we can charge for an idiot that parks at the door?
Madam Chair, several attorneys have assured us that, yes, that is the maximum that we can possibly levy here. I did leave out that we also would deem the activity as a nuisance, meaning we could immediately abate it, tow it, get it out of the way as well. So as the airport planner, that is the real fix, is being able to get that problem off the terminal road, like that. And then the fines are the most we can do.
Okay. Well, we do have cards. Can we go to the cards? Yeah. Okay. Lizzie, Ken? We have, each card can have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Lizzie Kim. I'm here on behalf of the Phoenix Aviation Advisory Board, the organization of which I'm the chair this year. I'm also here because, along with two of my other board members, we were very actively involved in this particular issue about the TNC rates as well as the package overall. We did this was Andrew Cohen and Stephanie Tierney and myself, because we actually are uniquely positioned in that we are 3 board members who were on the board at the time we initially welcomed the TNCs to the airport 3 years ago, and we're actively part of that negotiation. And we also thought of ourselves as something of neutrals in this. We are not the airport, we are not the TNCs, but we are uniquely positioned because we know very much the airport operations, and we stand in some ways, as you all do, in the shoes of the public. So I will tell you that the 3 of us were involved in 3 days of pretty intense negotiations, 1 day that was in person, 2 that were by phone. And we feel that we actually did, by the way, everyone who was involved was very actively involved, and we'd like to thank both the airport staff as well as the representatives of the 2 TNC organizations that were involved. Excuse me, I'm a little out of breath because I just ran here because I had to put some extra money into my meter at the car. Excuse me. I'd like to thank them both, all of them, for their cooperation. They did spend a tremendous amount of time. We did as well, because this is important. This is a very important issue to the airports and a very important issue to this community about the changing way that transportation works, particularly here at the airport. We believe that we came to what is a good result. Both sides, we forced both sides to give a little. As you may know, the airport originally asked for a rate that was higher. We asked the TNCs to ask for what is really meaningful to them in terms of their business, things the airport could give them that were meaningful, that were beyond just about the rates. Thus, we have these additional elements that allowed them to have a larger curb space that grows as their fees grow and commensurate with the actual percentage of usage of their drivers on that airport curb space. The airport agreed to additional branding, which is something that it was not available, but we also thought was very good for the user, the ultimate customer user, as well as the airport had agreed to pay for additional technology so that when you are on the curb, you will actually be able to find and watch your little car on your phone a little faster. The airport also agreed to scale the fees that were coming in, and the TNCs were also very, they were also engaged in that process very well. So on behalf of the Airport Advisory Board, this, as you heard, passed by unanimous vote, and we hope that you will take that into consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Piper.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Piper Overstreet. I'm here on behalf of Uber to oppose this egregious fee proposal. The services provided by TNCs have become an integral part of the airport experience for your constituents who rely on ride sharing as a safe, reliable, and affordable transportation option. We recognize that the airport generates costs with respect to the day-to-day management of TNC operations. As such, Uber supports the airport in setting trip fees that cover those costs. What we cannot support is the shakedown of a fee proposal that is not proportionate to our impact on the airport. Per this proposal, we are being made responsible for 80% of SkyTrain operations and maintenance, a project not rationally related to our riders or our business. Why should rideshare riders pay exponentially higher fares to get to and from the airport for something that does not enhance their rideshare experience? Furthermore, there is a 185% disparity between what TNCs would be paying under this proposal as compared to other similar ground transportation providers, Again, why is this the case? The airport shouldn't be in the business of choosing winners and losers in one industry or another. If we complete a higher volume of trips, which has been stated, than other ground transportation providers, then we will naturally pay more to the airport. There is no need to arbitrarily identify a higher fee amount under no real basis. Thank you.
Thank you. George Cavour?
Good morning. Thank you. Jorge Cavour with Lyft on the public policy team. I had extensive remarks prepared, but I think I'm going to change those because what became very clear in this conversation was how important these hearings are and these meetings are to get information out in the public. Some things were said this afternoon, or this morning, sorry, that I want to make sure we get a little clarity on. First of all, I want to thank the PAB because Chair Kim was incredibly supportive and helpful as we discussed this, as this issue kind of came sideswiped us a little bit after after Jordan mentioned of over a year of negotiation. Spent a year working very, very closely with the city, and in 7 days, all of that was thrown aside. So on September 12th, walked into a meeting, everything that was put on the table as part of our study, our analysis, put aside. New numbers were presented. By September 19th, 7 days later, we had a whole new set of numbers from $10 to $4. Incredible negotiation. I've been an attorney for 13 years. Never in 4 hours have I been able to see such dedicated staff work thoroughly through the airport. So I want to thank them for that. But I think what's clear here is the lack of information that's being presented to the council and to the council members. Number one, I have not seen a letter regarding additional commitments that these companies are being made. If we would like to extend this hearing until we can all review said letter, until, as the airport board members mentioned, we are looking at a business agreement, we would like to sign the dotted line and move forward with the ordinance. Currently, these are verbal commitments that we've made to one another, that these would be what we'd move forward, but there's no writing or commitment by any of the parties. Number two, a mention was made about getting curbside, getting folks off the curb. This seems to be a little disingenuous in one slide to say that we are going to commit curbside space 30 to 70% over the next 5 years, and in the same breath say, but we're going to kick you all off the curb because that's my primary goal. And if the goal is to reduce congestion at the airport, and you're talking about 60 million passengers, those aren't 60 million TNC drivers. Our volume is about 3% of your vehicle miles traveled. We have the data, we've presented it. If you want to charge everybody the fee to reduce everybody's congestion so we can all go to the parking lot, that makes sense. But that's the lack of information that's being presented, and that's what I wanted to make sure was highlighted here, and to ask for a consideration that we postpone this decision instead of dumping this before council without the full board, without the full analysis and the full information, to let staff go back and finalize this.
Thank you. Do you have a question?
I have a question to some of those comments, but we can go through all the cards and come back. But I would like you to address some of those comments. Thank you.
Jody Bazaar? I'm probably really murdering that name, I'm sorry.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, member of the board. My name is Jody Bazaar from Yellow Cab and AAA Transportation. You know, we all call this airport the most friendly, and I call the most clean airport in the whole nation. I've been in this airport since 1982. I drove, I managed, I owned the Yellow Cab and AAA Transportation. In 2009, they increased our fee from $200 a year to 400%, which is I was paying. I never argued, and then I went with the flow, and I never passed this to the customers. So we paid, we made money. So it's just a comment I'm making. If, you know, the staff, the director, you know, the board, they know they had these outreach meetings. They closed one last week. None of these people, they showed up on these meetings. And now they're talking about extend this, no. If I had to offer such an offer to our company, fees and everything, I would pay, and I go with the flow. It's a good program. Airport needs a fee to cover the expenses. So you need to pass it, please, and let it go on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Claude Maddox?
Good morning. Claude Maddox. I'm with Malera Alvarez, 5343 North 16th Street. I'm here in support of staff's recommendation and that which was unanimously supported by the PAB. Just very briefly, the reason that I support this is that you, council, have just recently passed a comprehensive master plan for the airport. We are doing great things. We all really appreciate all the improvements that have happened, including the passengers. Everybody needs to share in the cost of that. And as we move forward in the future, making sure that our airport is safe, making sure that we can accommodate the millions of passengers and those who leave and return to Phoenix. We need to be able to accommodate all those folks. These funds will allow that to happen. Having been on the council, first of all, I want to congratulate everyone in this process, because having been on the council 10 years ago when we passed former fees, it was not as nice. It was quite acrimonious. And for those who were here at that time, it was quite ugly, as a matter of fact. So thank goodness things have changed, but it's now time to remove some of the restrictions that are on the airport now, so that we can move forward with the improvements that are planned for our future to keep this airport viable, so that everyone, the TNCs and everyone else, will continue to benefit from that. And then the bottom line on it is that everybody who does business at the airport needs to be sharing in the costs of what we're doing at that airport. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Barrett.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Patrick Barrett, and I'm with High Ground Public Affairs, and we are representing the Fair Fees Coalition. First, we'd like to thank Jordan Feld and the team at Sky Harbor, who's worked diligently throughout the benchmarking study. Jordan and his team have been professional, fair, and accessible throughout the process, and we wish to thank them for their work. The Fair Fees Coalition is made up of off-site parking providers, Blue Sky Airport Parking, Pre-Flight Airport Parking, and the Parking Spot. We had many questions throughout the process and appreciate the reassurances that we've received from Sky Harbor. First, that they generally do not plan to change the parking shuttle drop-off or pickup areas. Second, that the trip fees will be revisited if major changes occur. And third, that they will partner with ground transportation providers to ensure a smooth rollout of the technology. These reassurances, coupled with a predictable annual increase in trip fees, allows our coalition members to better plan to meet the needs of their employees and Sky Harbor customers moving forward. With this being said, our members support the proposed policy change and look forward to serving Sky Harbor for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have cards that do not wish to speak, but are in favor. Brian Amaral, Gregory Torres, Chris Nickel. That's all the cards I have. Do you have questions? You
can go first.
Okay.
Jim, can you speak to the comments that were made, but this letter that I keep hearing about, because I heard about it in my meeting yesterday. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, this letter that is being spoken about are all the extra items that are non-code items that today, as we move forward, and if this passes, those items will be included in the letter and then be submitted.
Madam Chair, to Councilwoman Pastor, that is correct. Until such time as the council, agrees with the recommendation, should the council agree with the recommendations, then we would then issue the letter committing to those side issues such as signage, which doesn't belong in a code, and branding and technology improvements on the curb. Those are day-to-day partnership activities that we conduct with our ground transportation partners. We would write them and commit to those, just as the gentleman from Fair Fees just mentioned. We've made commitments to them also, and we will codify those commitments in letters to them. But we need council direction first as to whether or not this is going to be adopted, and once that occurs, then we would be issuing those letters.
So is there then another letter that says that? I mean, look, I mean, being a negotiator for many years, I know that it's important, to have stuff in writing and things signed just because, people tend to change their mind sometimes. Is there something also in writing that they also have that says, yes, we're committed to this and we're moving this forward?
Absolutely, and great question, Councilwoman. So, first and foremost, what Mr. Bennett just spoke of, the specific items that we're talking about that won't be in code but are a commitment, they're documented in the minutes of the PAB meeting. They're also documented in emails from me to the stakeholders. Last week, one of the stakeholders suggested that we would also like to formalize this with a letter. We said we were happy to provide a letter, I think within an hour of receiving that request. We asked the stakeholder to provide specifics around, because these are very general terms, right, and how, when, that should be sorted out. We asked them to provide that information, and then, as Mr. Bennett noted, presuming council approval of this, those specific items would go into this letter we're speaking of. So we've documented it on these meeting records. We've sent emails documenting our intent to do this. We've even asked specifically for them to identify to the Nats wing exactly what they would like to see happen and how, and that would all go into this letter that we're talking about.
In addition to that, could you also address the fact that lack of information, unawareness, not being involved, September 12th, the analysis, fees were dropped and analysis was kicked to the curb or thrown to the side. Could you please address that?
Thank you, Councilwoman. Happy to. So we started this process in September of 2018. The TNC's fare fees, which I don't know if it was clear, but they represent the off-airport parking providers. Those interests were very involved on the front end of the project in terms of what airports we would look at, what information we would collect, and we went through the process. As some of the other stakeholders just testified, there were dozens of meetings in between kicking off the project up until July, this past July, when the benchmarking study was completed. To be honest, the fare fees stakeholders participated in every single meeting, the scheduled GT roundtable meetings, the closed-door stakeholder-only meetings that we had our ombudsman consultants facilitate. The TNCs did not participate as much during the making of the benchmarking study. The benchmarking study concluded in late July. In mid-August, we sent all of the GT stakeholders the proposed fee table. So I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but recall that today in city code, there's pages of ordinance that reflect the first fee schedule that was proposed years ago. And so for that reason, there's a lot of explanatory text. The only change now, at least from the mid-August perspective, was changing that fee table, which we sent out. That was 2 months ago now. All of them were sent that information. As we then went through the Phoenix Aviation Advisory Board process and changes were made, each change that went with that, we immediately sent out the change recommendation that would come out of that negotiation. So as quick as this information could be provided to them, it has been provided to them. There's a couple of other points I would just hit on real quick. I think this is an ongoing discussion, is who should pay for SkyTrain? And so you'll hear this today and in the future, I'm sure of it. So I don't know that there's a clear answer, but I think it's fair to say that airlines pay for aprons and taxiways and runways, and as Mr. Bennett walked through the different business lines, they all have some direct benefit from something at the airport, and generally speaking, our finance director ties that cost to that direct benefit. Of all the business lines at the airport, the most direct beneficiary of less congestion on the roadway are the GT providers. So there was one other point, I guess the TNC letter we hit on.
We have
sorry,
a question.
Yeah. Could you speak to the statement about 80% is being funded by the TNCs? Is that accurate, Jay?
I believe they're referring to their portion of that. So the operations and maintenance of the SkyTrain we're proposing would be allocated fully to ground transportation, of which they have about 70% of those costs. And I'm sorry, 70% of the trips.
The TNCs rightly note that their increase is more being proposed than the other GT providers, and that's unfair. However, the pure airports that the TNCs told us to look at all have different TNC fees relative to limos or taxis. So just like every airport we looked at, we're proposing higher TNC fees. And while not every airport told us their reasons why, in some cases that's confidential information as we did these interviews with the different airports, the reality is TNCs put more demand on airport resources than their similar types of providers. And finally, as fare fees, Patrick noted, there are several implementation issues for fare fees that we've also agreed to as well. So I just want to make that very clear.
So I just had a question on a comment that you made. You mentioned benchmarking, that they weren't that involved in that process. Is there a reason? Is there a reason why they weren't?
So I'm sorry if I misstated it, Councilwoman. At the front end of the benchmarking study, we asked stakeholders, tell us what consultants we should use, tell us what the scope of work for the study should be, and tell us how about to go through this process. And the TNCs were very proactive and very communicative at the front end so that the process would kind of unfold the way they saw fit. Other GT stakeholders provided the same input, so it wasn't just TNCs, it was off-airport parking, taxi, super shuttle, all of them gave us input on the front end. The point I was trying to make was, during the process, we had, at a minimum, monthly meetings where we kept the stakeholders up to date, showed them the information, allowed them to make changes as we went. The point I'm trying to make is those specific touch points were more the taxis, limos, off-airport parking. To my, the TNCs really didn't engage heavily until the study was completed in July. And that's when they started to ask questions about, well, what is the recommendation? And as I noted, 2 weeks after the study was completed, we had emailed out the draft recommendation, if you will.
So you use the benchmarking analysis in order to draft?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I just wrote down, September 12th, we got a letter, and then analysis was thrown to the side. And I'm assuming that's the benchmarking analysis.
So correct. The benchmarking sorry. Go ahead. So the benchmarking analysis is, basically gives you the average of airports from Austin to San Francisco. And so you can identify as the median in any of that data set is, from their perspective, the good way to go. But certainly we don't classify ourselves in Austin or some of the other airports that were told us to benchmark by these same stakeholders.
So what I'm hearing is you did use the benchmarking analysis to, you looked at the information, you analyzed it to get to the number.
Madam Chair, to Councilwoman Pastor, the benchmarking analysis was not used to establish
The rate.
number, the rate that we are recommending to
That's what I
council
need to know.
today. The intent of that benchmarking analysis was to determine how do the existing fees in Phoenix compare.
Okay.
And as we showed on that slide, we were at the very bottom. Then after the study was completed, then Jay DeWitt and our finance team took that cost, applied that to a rate model, and what we are recommending is the result of that analysis. And then what we have done after that calculation has taken place is then compare the proposed rate to the benchmark airports to see if it is in the reasonable range. And as Jordan noted, it's no longer at the very bottom, but it is moved up, but it is still within the reasonable range of the peer airports in the analysis. So it's a reasonable fee based on that study.
So it moved up three cities. Oh, I'm looking at this. This is my last question. What I would like, real quick, Mr. Bennett, is a very fact-oriented, how did TNCs get into the airport, and what taxi drivers at the time had to pay, and how that came about to where we are today.
I don't know if we have enough time.
But I think it's just real, like, 2000, boom, this is what.
So, Madam Chair, to Councilwoman Pastor, let me see, and sometimes it was such a process that I've tried to mentally block out some of the pain and suffering that occurred during that time period. But back in 2016, when the introductions of TNCs at the state legislature, they had some enabling legislation passed, and we were trying to embrace that new technology into our airport model. And before the introduction of TNCs to the airport model, the taxi industry, we had taxi companies that we did a competitive process to select taxis that were authorized to do business at the airport. And in other words, it's very similar to the terminal concessions. So you established essentially what the fair market value of accessing that huge commercial enterprise at the airport was by that bidding process. And so as Joe mentioned in his testimony, his companies, they paid the airport millions of dollars for the right to access that commercial market and pick up people at the airport. With the introduction of TNCs, that model was no longer available. And so the council converted to very rapidly, we had to convert to a complete rewrite of the code dealing with ground transportation. And we also had to change the entire fee structure because it was not reasonable to have somebody bid for the rights to do business at the airport and then have a whole new technology competing and not having to pay. So we changed to the per trip basis for all users. And now in that code, there was a requirement that we do this benchmarking study and have it all done and implemented prior to January 1st of 2020. So we have done that, and now we're bringing forward the changes to that trip fee schedule. And that's the only substantive change to the ordinance in front of you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. When you were doing the Pure Airport review, did you also analyze the percentage of ground transportation, percentage of TNCs, cabs, limos, so that help with the cost analysis?
Great question, Councilwoman. I would expect it with your planning process pedigree. That's correct. Any airport that would provide us that type of info, because that was a clear scoping, please make sure you collect this info as you go. Anything about their financial situation specifically, the context of the airport, include that data in the benchmarking, and we did to the degree we could get that data.
And just a follow-up, looking at all these airports, they're pretty consistent with our type of ground transportation. For example, O'Hare, you probably could take the train into it with great convenience, but some of these would probably be more dependent upon vehicles, vans.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought so. Thank you.
I have a question on the cap. Go back to the section. Why we have a cap nowadays instead of just allowing either CPI or whatever to dictate.
Madam Chair, I can't speak to why the cap was put in there back in 2008.
I was probably guilty.
It was probably, yeah.
But, from a market perspective, there is probably not a technical need to have a cap in an ordinance because, the accessing the airport is a very competitive environment. There are different modes. You can take the light rail, or you can have friends and relatives take you to the airport and drop you off and pick you up. And so, as an operator of parking at the airport, we're not going to price our product so that people don't use our product. It would not be a reasonable move on our part because those revenue streams are important to the operation of the airport. So it's really a discretion of council on that cap.
So if it was removed out of your language, it won't really be noticeable? Is that it? I always trust you to be responsible.
Madam Chair, yeah, I mean, if it was removed, you know, we wouldn't be changing parking rates. In fact, we currently don't charge up to the maximum allowed under code today. And we were just trying to be a little proactive here by moving those caps upward so that at some point in the future, if the airport needed to change its parking rates, it would not need to come back to council and request a escalation of the caps.
We did with the airport, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm supporting what you proposed. I'm, no, no, no.
It doesn't include the letter in your
No,
action.
yeah.
It's
yeah.
on the record. Don't
Yeah,
worry about the
yeah.
letter.
But it's not in your recommendation, madam. It says increase commercial transportation.
I know it's not on the sir. It is on the record.
It's not on the, there is no letter on
There is a record of this meeting. This still goes to council.
but it does not have the letter articulated.
So you know what we're
No.
doing? We're going to move forward. Thank you.
No, no.
It's not on the record. It's not on the record.
Anyway, I support what you're proposing. I think it's fair. We have had previous experience with, actually, I think you've done very well under the circumstances. I sit on the Phoenix Basic Gateway Board, and they pay more there for their 1 million passengers per year compared to Phoenix. I mean, you can't even make a good comparison. So I'm very strongly support this. I would suggest we remove the word cap out of this. I think they're right on, responsible. You can't put yourself out of the market. And I would suggest we move it forwards.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to move it forward. I don't know if I have to go through the whole, but I would love to be able to make a motion to approve city code amendment related to commercial ground transportation trip fees, parking rate cap, and unattended vehicle civil penalties.
May I add, for all purposes, that a letter will be given with the points that we are voting on and what is in the PAB record.
And removing the cap.
And removing the cap.
Okay? You have comments?
Second.
All in
Sorry.
favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for all your hard work. I think that takes us to item 13, and I have asked staff to come about every 3 months and give us a report on how they're proceeding with the infrastructure and the drought problem. So if we could have a quick report, I'd appreciate it.
Madam Chair, subcommittee members, thank you so much for listening to us this morning. We really quickly wanted to present you with an update on the infrastructure that we are building to ensure that we can provide reliable water deliveries in parts of North Phoenix during shortage conditions on the Colorado River. With me here today is Assistant Director Troy Hayes and Darlene Helm, who is in charge of our water engineering group. Darlene will go through the presentation, and then we're here for any questions you might have.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, I'll give you a brief update on our drought resiliency infrastructure program. I'll review the background on the need for the program. Then I'll go through an overview of the program components with a status update and review our public outreach to date. So just a little review of the Phoenix water supplies. We receive about 97% of our water from surface water. So 50% roughly comes from the Salt and Verde rivers through the Salt River Project at 3 of our water treatment plants. And receive about 47% of Colorado River water through the CAP at 2 of our water treatment plants. And then only about 3% from groundwater. So because we have been using surface water as our main source of water, it's allowed us to store groundwater for future needs. But because of that, we need to be concerned with climate conditions and drought. So I'm sure most of you have seen a picture of Lake Mead recently. This is from February. where the current water level is, and then where we were near capacity just a little over 20 years ago. So we are in a drought on the Colorado River system. This is concerning because this is the lake we look to set whether or not there are restrictions on the Colorado River. So restrictions are looming. Our core function is providing safe, reliable water to all of our customers, so we need to be prepared for restrictions. So this map here is showing, like I mentioned, that we have two surface water sources. The area in the dark blue is our SRP system. And then the area to the north, that looks really light blue, is our Colorado River system. So basically, it's good that we have two water sources systems. We aren't solely relying on Colorado River water. So when we did an internal study to see if we had enough water, if there are going to be restrictions on the Colorado River system with SRP in our wells, and we determined that based on careful planning and managing of our resources that we do have enough water to supply all of our residents. We just need the infrastructure to move the water north into the area currently served by Colorado River. So what is our plan? So it's really light here on the screen, but it should be a map of the city of Phoenix. This area here is, in this that you're looking at, is around 20th Street in Maryland to 32nd Street in Shea. We need to install a 66-inch water main coming out of our 24th Street water treatment plant, and also replace an existing 48-inch main because it's at the end of its useful life. We now also need to extend that 66-inch main up along 32nd Street from Shea to Bell. We need to install a 42-inch main along 35th Avenue from Thunderbird to Grover's. And then we need to install 4 large pump stations to move that water north and throughout the system in order to get water from our Colorado River system, or from the Salt River system up to the Colorado River.
And what time frame do you expect to do that?
And I'm going to go right into the next slide and show you. So there's generally, we're going to be constructing the first portion starting in January of 2020, but most of the components of the program will be between the fall of 2020 through the fall of 2022, with the idea that the entire program will be complete by December of 2022.
And you're talking what you've showed us.
Yes, yep. So project 1, the area that's coming out of our 24th Street water treatment plant, the 66-inch main and the 48-inch main, we're in design right now. We expect to start construction in January of 2020 on the 48-inch main. And this project will be grouped into like segments throughout this area. So we'll focus on the 48-inch main starting in January. We'll move to the 66-inch main down near the 24th Street water treatment plant around fall of 2020, and then move through the neighborhood and up into the preserve in early 2021, and then move through the preserve and up into the crossing the SR 51 into late 2021, early 2022. So it'll kind of move in segments up. And then at the same time, we're also working on this project area 2, which we're in design right now. This is, again, an extension of that 66-inch main. So we'll start in the fall of 2020 in the area around 32nd Street and Shea, and moving in kind of rolling construction segments as we move along 32nd Street through the fall of 2022. So the entire road won't be under construction during this time, but you'll see construction activities in segments along the road. So there'll be some pre-construction activities like blue staking, potholing, and then say a particular business may see what you think of as true construction work, trenching, laying the pipe, backfilling for about 3 to 4 weeks. And then that will kind of move forward. And then there might be some post-construction activities where you're seeing paving. So kind of in rolling segments along the entire alignment. And then similarly on 35th Avenue, you'll have activities. This particular project, we're actually removing a 36-inch main and putting in a 42-inch main because we need the larger capacity. So this will be done in 2 segments because of just needing the existing main in service. But again, rolling construction segments, so somebody's not going to see that entire segment under construction for that 2-year period. And then we have 4 large booster pump stations that we're working on. So one at our 24th Street water treatment plant at 24th Street in Lincoln. It's a 60 million gallon per day pump station on the plant property. We have one a pump station at Deer Valley Water Treatment Plant at 31st and Dunlap. That one's a 40 million gallon per day pump station. And then we have a pump station at Central and Deer Valley. It's a 60 million gallon per day pump station. And then one at 32nd Street in Bell, and it's a 60 million gallon per day pump station. So these pump stations are helping us move the water north and throughout the system. So their construction timeline is that fall of 2020 through fall of 2022. There will be some work in the streets around the pump station just to connect all the piping together, but mostly contained on site. So because this is a massive undertaking for the department, it's a huge program, a lot of impacts throughout the community. We've been working very hard on our public outreach plan for this program. We're doing a lot of things we normally do for any type of project, but this is just a lot more of it. I mean, there's just a lot more activities. So we do mailers, door hangers, we have a project hotline number, we have an email address. We always have emergency contact during construction. We're going to have specific public meetings for the businesses to provide outreach and make sure that they have contact during the construction. We have public meetings planned. We've been interacting with public safety and fire to ensure that we can get any kind of rescue vehicles in during construction, providing updates just through e-newsletters, and then a lot of meetings with our stakeholders. We actually have a couple of schools in the project area 1, and we've been meeting quite a bit with them. And then these are just some specific outreach that we've already had meetings with, like I mentioned, with the schools. We presented a couple of weeks ago to the Phoenix Sonoran Preserve and Mountain Parks Preserve Committee. We have a meeting next week with the Phoenix Mountain Preservation Council. And then our first public meeting for Project Area 1 is scheduled on October 24th. So just some updates there. And that's it for
Any questions? Councilwoman?
First off, I want to thank you. I know you've already alerted some of the neighborhood leaders in the 32nd Street and Shea area. I know we're doing a lot of road construction, so maybe at the GAIN events, I talked to Keeney, I see he already
He
left,
just
but
left.
yeah, darn it. But I suggested maybe he have some of his staff at the GAIN events as well to talk about coordinating, because they've done a pretty aggressive CIP in the next 3.5 years. I know it's going to be critical along 32nd Street, I'm sure 35th as well. So if there's a way you could work with them and make sure you're kind of teaming up, because we hear it all the time. Just got the road paved, now it's torn up again. So I think it'd be critical to have both at these GAIN events. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for the update.
Okay. Thank you.
Keep us posted. If you run into problems, it's more important you call us. Future agenda items, do we have? I think we have something you requested on the next agenda.
Now I forget.
I know you did.
we're doing the alleys, we're doing that at land use, so,
Okay,
there was one other.
okay. Anything you want on
Oh,
this? All right.
Oh, the red light, but I think, is that public safety's gonna
Oh,
take that
public
up?
safety,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Let us know if you change your mind. We are adjourned.